Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Kicking off the high tempo. Had a shorter show last week. I didn't realize it when we were recording it. But this week, cut out some of the pre-show stuff so we can hopefully get a full episode in because I am not feeling well. Slept pretty much the entire weekend. And I missed the XFL Championship game, which I'm glad I did because DC got upset by Big Game Bob and his losing record. Was it Arlington?
Yes.
I think they ended 500, right? 6-6, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't really watch much of the highlights and stuff. Like I said, I was pretty much knocked out. And I saw the TV ratings. They came in at 1.4 million, which to me seems like a disappointment for a championship game. I was really hoping that they would push around 2.5 to 3 million, just because I know, looking at the college football numbers that I've been crunching, that ACC football, like even the mid-tier teams that I say like aren't really worth it for the Big Ten to take, they're pulling through around 3 million. And to see that not get hit in the spring by the XFL on a Saturday night, honestly, it's kind of disappointing as an outside fan. I also think that, and again, I didn't watch the game, but I think it also points to the importance of coaching. Because if you remember my man Steve Spurrier coached one of these leagues, he's a legendary college football coach, wins the championship, right? I know they shortened the season or whatever, but basically he did. This year, DC had far and away the best team. And you needed a coach like Bob Stoops that knew how to get his team to turn it on in the playoffs, which is just a 4-team format. So it's just back-to-back games. You need to win 2 games. Can you make the adjustments? And both times his offense came out and was able to move the ball when they struggled with it throughout the year. And I think that highlights the importance of some of these leagues where if you can pull some of these great coaches in, you'll get a better product, and I think you'll get better viewers as well. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I think with the Renegades, one of the big things that's being left out was they struggled early in the year because they had inconsistent quarterback play. They made the trade for Perez from the Vipers, and getting that quarterback was a huge get for them because they really turned it around after they acquired him. And he was around with the Guardians the last go, and like he's bounced around a little bit, but like he was a name that when I saw that they traded for him, I recognized him from the previous season. And I didn't think that he played terrible. And I mean, obviously, he won the championship this year, so I mean, I think that that's something to contribute. Now, you're talking about some of the ratings and the numbers, and I think one of the things that's being left out in this is that when you're looking at these mid-level college football teams, there's a level of familiarity, of rivalry, of consistency, of years and years of consistent playing that's drawing people in, and you recognize people and coaches and things that are there. There's rivalries built in. With these leagues being new, like it's not a surprise that you're not seeing as much attention being brought to them. I think it's just you're comparing apples to oranges when you're trying to compare the NFL and college football season in the fall to what these spring leagues are right now, because I think there's more with NBA and NHL playoffs to contend with the weather changing, especially in the north, that you start getting more family activities and stuff going on outside that like you're not going to be as inclined to be watching games. That I think factors into some of that as well.
Yeah, that's why I didn't compare them to like the Big Ten or something, knowing like the numbers are going to be kind of off. Seeing the ACC complain about their TV deal and having it on the schedule for later in the show to talk about where they actively have teams trying to get paid more money. It just seemed like it was a good comparison because their games a lot of the times get thrown onto like those weird ESPN channels, which is where the XFL's been living, right? So you have a pretty close comparison for like what I think they would ideally like for the league to survive, and then to be under that number, which isn't bad, because they still broke 1 million. If they were under 1 million, I wouldn't even think there would be a season next year. I think they do come back. They're not going to do expansion, I think I saw. So the numbers are good enough, not good enough to expand the league yet. And again, I don't even know if you need that, because you expand the league if you need more games, like the show, because there's so many people watching. I don't think you had that. So why give yourself that extra burden? I kind of think the same thing. They should have did more regional, close area teams to like build a rivalry to get people to watch, or hell, get rid of the city names altogether and do it by region or something. Like, try to think outside the box, right?
Well, I do think the one advantage that the XFL has right now over the USFL, and then maybe I'll eat my words later on it, but it seems like the timing of the XFL schedule fit so much better that their season ended right as the NFL draft was ending, so that as players had an opportunity to be evaluated, they were able to be signed from the XFL to the NFL and for as much as I've dogged them over the course of the year of not really broadcasting stuff, they really pushed which teams were signing which guys from the XFL. And maybe it's going to start creating this pipeline if you see some of these guys make NFL rosters, that these are the guys playing in the spring that then will be available for the next NFL free agency period, and have that as a pipeline for it. You know, I think maybe that generates some level of consistency where you're maybe starting to recognize some of the name brand guys, because they're going to be wanting to play in that league, knowing that the season ends and they're able to be evaluated and signed with an NFL team.
Yeah, that's where I really like the schedule. I think it was last week, I said I didn't like the bye week before the championship game. Maybe that put the advantage for Bob Stoops. You know, he's used to getting his team to prep for bowl games or whatever. Where I think if DC would have came in riding their hot streak, they probably would have won. I think most people would have assumed that they would have won eight times out of 10 or something like that at least. And so just to have the season end, because you're playing the championship game the same weekend that the Sixers and Celtics are going game 7, right? Like, not deep into the NBA playoffs, but you're kind of in your like divisional round finals, I would think, right? Because that's how it was for hockey. So you have a pretty big deal in both the NHL and the NBA this past weekend, where teams are locking up to move into the conference finals. And I think just based on like history, if you're going to watch one sport, because most people didn't take my idea for 2 TVs yet, you're going to be probably locked into the more traditional basketball or hockey compared to a random XFL game. You check it out and see like, oh, this team has like 5 wins. Like, I'm not going to watch that. This is their championship. Like, it kind of throws you off. But I think they could have dropped the records that I've seen them like promoting and just went with the seed, like the 1 seed versus the 2 seed championship. People don't know that it's like the 2 seed in the West or whatever. They would just like go by seeding like the NCAA tournament. I think that to me, that's what I would have promoted more. But I kept seeing like the records, and that's when I was like, that's going to turn a lot of people off, I think. Just because they're used to seeing like winning records in the playoffs and stuff. They make fun of NFL teams with losing records going through. But do you have anything else for the XFL before we move on?
No.
All right, quick aside here. We talked about Bob Huggins last week. Wanted to just give an update on that. So he ended up being fined like $1 million a year, which seems like a salary deduction because it's not like a renegotiation. But it seemed to me that they were just eating that money, and now West Virginia gets it back, and they weren't like donating it. Now Bob has to donate like some of his other money or time to like both the center at Xavier, which I guess was like the Catholic thing, his like fine or his penance for like the Catholic comment, and then he had to do one for the diversity center or something on West Virginia's campus. And so I was surprised that he had to do all three. I think making the guy take a pay cut, and they suspended him like what, 2 games. But I saw that that's like all that, like that was a Big 12 thing. So I read a thing by someone close to the West Virginia department or athletic department that said like they specifically looked at Bill Self's punishment, and I think he did the same exact thing with his like paying players or whatever. And I thought that was very smart because like the NCAA is not going to pry into the Bob Huggins thing, because then they can specifically say like, well, we just modeled it off of Bill Self's punishment, you know? One was a comment, one was like paying players. And like, what's the NCAA going to do? So they're like putting the pressure on the NCAA to say like, that's not enough. But
yeah,
is it enough? I mean, one of the donors came out. I saw an article today. It was like, one of their donors starts to direct money away from the athletic department after their decision to keep Bob Huggins. But realistically, like, with how misleading a lot of the news headlines are these days, like, is that one a donor? Like, right? The way it reads is like it's a major donor, but it doesn't really come out and say that it's a major donor. It just says like one donor's now. They could have just picked a random kid off the street and like, hey, you donate to West Virginia, you're going to keep doing it after the Huggins thing. It's like, nah, I'm not going to do anything for athletics. And then they write a headline on it. So it's like, all right. I don't know how much of an impact, because I don't think they have like a big time donor from what I've read that's pulling out right now. I saw a lot of heat like into his defense, which I was kind of surprised at because I honestly thought that their students would kind of rally and want him fired. But, I mean, with the way things are today, I'm very surprised that he's coming back. Let's see. The only other thing I had for high tempo is the Celtics and Sixers game. So, Matt, do you have anything you want to talk on before we hit on that?
Yeah, Rivers got canned. So I'm surprised that they just didn't absolutely clean everyone out after blowing that.
Oh, he got canned from the Sixers?
Yeah, they fired Rivers.
Oh, you threw me off because you're like, nah, I have something to talk about before that, and then you talked about the Sixers. So I'm thinking Phillip Rivers, bro. I'm like, Phillip Rivers? Like,
no,
that's an odd time because isn't he like a high school football coach now?
No, Doc Rivers, the Sixers coach, and I thought going into Game 7 was like he's coaching for his job right now because they did so much to be in that position. Like they have the talent around that they should win. They
had it locked up, and the game, what was it, 5 or 6? Like whatever game that was, it was Game 5 where it put them up 3-2. I thought this is over. And then in my like delirious weekend state, because like Thursday, I start to like feel like I have a fever, right? I must have like some type of COVID. I don't know. And like Friday was kind of like a blur, where it was like I'm starting to really get sick. Saturday, I was completely out of it. And same with like Sunday. I barely remember. I saw the Celtics were playing, and then just randomly, I thought, wait a second, I wonder if the Celtics, like, if they lost, because I had a feeling the Sixers were going to win the series. Because, like, that Game 5 was so decisive in Boston, right, to go up 3-2. Isn't that what it was? Or did they?
They choked it away and had to pull it out in overtime. And then it was like, I thought, if you don't close this out in 6, you're going to blow it in 7.
And 7 started hot. Like, I turned it on second quarter-ish, and it was back and forth. And I thought, well, this is where the Celtics will start to lose it, right? Because Harden hit a couple shots, and I thought, oh, it's over. And then they just disappeared. The Sixers, like no one was doing anything. And so I was just kind of baffled. Like it was almost like a runaway train where they were just like letting Tatum hit these shots. And I had said before, like Tatum needs to step up, or I know the Celtics core is young and people keep saying like, oh, don't worry if the Celtics don't win this year. Their core is young. It's like, yeah, but they have to win sometime, buddy. Because otherwise, they're never going to have that experience as winners. And then other teams are just going to jump them. Right? No, people weren't saying, oh, well, Steph Curry and the Warriors never should have won. They're too young. They were like, wow, this group of guys, they're really young. They could win multiple. With the Celtics, it's like, nah, that's just an excuse, guys. They're pretty young here. I mean, Al Horford come back. He's a vet. You need to get these young guys on the same page. And, I mean, Tatum went off, but it wasn't even forced at that point. Like, they were just leaving him open. I thought the Sixers kind of quit, so I'm not surprised that Rivers got fired.
I mean, it's frustrating because, like, when I watch the Sixers, they just do some stuff that it like reminds you of a junior high basketball team. Like you have Joel Embiid, who's enormous. He should just be beaten anytime he steps outside the 3-point line. Like, what are you doing out there? You have no business being out that far.
Well, that's what got me on the big run. It didn't seem like the Sixers caught any timeouts. They didn't try to go down low. I think I counted Embiid touches at like 2 or 3, and they were all at the top of the key, like he was Kevin Garnett or something. And he wasn't like knocking down shots. He would just get the ball and then pass it. And it was almost like they like kind of just panicked. And I was thinking like, they're going to let this go. It's like 5-point lead, like 10-point lead, 15. I was like, they're not going to stop this. But it got all the way to like 30, didn't it?
But like the way that they play, it's just so streaky that it's like, we're down, we have to keep shooting threes, and then they brick them, and then it's like, we have to keep shooting threes. It's like, no, work it in, get a layup, like start scoring points. And
yeah, I thought they should have slowed it down. They didn't slow it down. You're right. They just kept jacking threes, and the Celtics were hitting them. And like at one point, like Tatum hit one, and then he made like a 50 with his hands. Like I was like, he doesn't have 50 points already. It's like the third quarter. And then he did have 50 points, and I was like, holy crap, which is like an NBA record.
He like pulled up from damn near midcourt and hit a 3, and it was like, all right, well, we're done here.
I thought there's no way they blow this because this is ridiculous. But that third quarter, when I swear they got up like 30 points, and I just thought like the Sixers are doing nothing to slow this down, and a head coach should do something. Like Doc Rivers, they like showed him, and he was like just shocked on the sideline for one of the TV timeouts. And Celtics coach has Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they're like diagramming something on the board. And I thought that he doesn't even have the whole team, but like what I'm seeing out of him talking to like his 2 young studs and drawing something up, while Doc Rivers just kind of looks like he wants to take a nap. I knew the game was over.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, because Doc's like, yeah, I'm ready to come back next year and do this again. And I was like, do it again. Buddy, this was the year. You blew it. You're up. You had 2 games to win. All you had to do is win 1.
And, you know, I look at this, and when I go back to, I think the Sixers screwed the pooch with letting Jimmy Butler go to Miami. And they never should have let him, they were in a good spot with him there. And I think they tried to make the best of the situation by bringing Harden in to try to have some kind of complementary player to Embiid. But it just, they couldn't get them to gel correctly. It just, they were so streaky that either they were going to win by 80 or they were going to lose by 80. And it just, the more that they fired him up, it was the more frustrating it got. It was just like, just do something to stop the bleed. And they're like, the announcer's like, well, James Harden is not known for his defense. It's like, well, maybe you should play some defense because you're about to get your ass kicked.
Yeah, that's where I like I said, I saw Harden hit like 2 shots in a row, and I thought he's going to take over this game. And then after he disappeared, I was like, did Harden ever win anything? Maybe this is why he just disappears like in the big spots. Because it has to be past his time to win a championship if he hasn't already. I don't know if he has, but
No.
I'll look it up quick. But I don't think he did. He
No.
always seems like he's close, and I don't want to jinx it with like the Heat or anything. But like I said, you're playing an 8 seed in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, this is a perfect chance for the Sixers to make the finals, which I don't think they've done since Iverson, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the COVID years I kind of forget. But, like, yeah, Harden won one MVP, no championships. So it's like he's in his 30s, and he had a chance. Like I said, he was going toe-to-toe. And I don't even think he missed a shot. I just think that, like, he just kind of got out of the rotation. I don't remember him even getting the ball and, like, being nervous, like, oh, here comes Harden, he's going to score.
But you know,
like all right.
I'm not even mad, like, that Harden shoots, because like that's the way he's always played. But I think schematically there has to be something where you get the ball to Embiid down in the post and make them have to defend that. And that he spends so much time at the free throw line or above that it's like, even in those situations, like he doesn't have opportunities for rebounds and putbacks because he's clear back at the 3-point line. It's like, get your big 7'5" ass down there where you have a chance to make some to be the most effective.
That's why I was surprised, because like I haven't watched much of the Sixers, and didn't he win MVP?
Yes.
And for them to like have no impact on Game 7, I was kind of like relieved, because I thought for sure they'd start pounding down low, and they never did.
But I think that was one of the double-edged swords too, is that with putting that extra pressure on him with being MVP, that it was like, oh, this is your time, like take over. And
yeah, like who's the Celtics guarding him with?
Horford.
Horford. Like he's like 100 years old.
Yeah.
Hey, I like Horford. I hope he gets a ring, because I think he's like Harden. I think he's been close, but I don't think he's ever gotten one. So this would be nice if he can get one this year. But you got to get past the Heat with Butler or whatever they have, because they have him, right? I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah.
They have a good thing going, but they're an 8 seed. And then on the other side, you have the Lakers in the same position. They're a 7 seed facing, I think, the number 1 Nugs pulled it out. So you have a decent battle. Anything else on the NBA before you want to keep going?
They had video released of the Grizzlies. Ja Morant had another gun thing. So I don't know how much of a suspension he'll be looking at now.
Well, so that's what I was kind of confused by. Was he on probation for the nightclub incident? Because I saw this break on regular news after the game, because I was like too tired to change the channel. So I just had it on, and it was like, breaking news. Another bright young star from the NBA makes a mistake. And I was like, makes a mistake? What are they talking about here? And they were like, he flashes a gun on a video online. And I was like, all right, that doesn't seem too bright, my man. Flashing videos of guns. And then it was like his second offense. And I was like, all right, yeah, there's something wrong with this guy that he's doing that. And like I said before, it makes you think, whenever you're coming up, like, do you need a guy, when they always talk about like the NFL doing like the old Wonderlic test, whatever they call it now, and it's like the personality thing, like, do you really take that into account? It's like, yeah, if you have a guy repeatedly just videoing himself with guns and he's not supposed to have them. But then I was kind of confused, because at the end of the segment, they said he's never been charged for a crime. And then I thought, well, then why does the NBA care if he's flashing videos of a gun? Like, if it's not legal? People post videos of them with guns all the time. If he legally owns the gun, why does the NBA care? So now that's my question to you, Matt. Like, if that was a legal thing, I don't know.
Maybe that's something the NBA just put in contracts just to. I don't know if that was in the print of his contract, but I can see them trying to do that to not have any negative publicity.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess it's like a different hunting thing, but like Chipper Jones used to always be taking pictures of him hunting with guns and a couple other MLB guys. So like if the NBA guys are like out shooting skeet or something, like they're not allowed to do that? Or is it because the first one I think was at the nightclub when he took the video of himself. And I thought, that's a dumb move, dude. What are you doing? How drunk are you to be taking that video in the first place? And then the second time, he's just in his car. But like if he's in his own driveway or something, like I don't see how that would be illegal if he legally owns it, but I don't know. I'm not a guns guy. I don't know all the laws, you know. I'm sure some NRA guy would be all over me. Like, bro, he's allowed to flash his gun as many videos as he wants. I'm like, all right, cool, buddy. Cool. That was what struck me wrong. Is like at the very end of the segment, like real quick, she just said, he's never gotten charged with any crime. And I was like, okay. Then why did you do a whole 5-minute segment on him, lady? It's like, yeah, a guy walking around shirtless downtown, although that's not a crime. More news coming up. It's like, all right, why am I watching this news then? Let's see. Oh, the NHL, Hurricanes moved on, and they're playing the Panthers. Same situation. Wild card 2. I know they beat Boston, and Boston was like the team to beat. So the Canes are in a good position. The Celtics are in a good position. I'm hoping, knock on wood, DC, maybe I'm just cursed for football. All my teams get the playoffs. They shit the bed. Maybe I can see a championship soonish before my Braves win another one, right? Because Braves have to win a couple, I would think, at this time. They were cursed from Ted Turner, and Ted Turner ruined WWF, which I didn't realize at the time. I watched a Netflix documentary on wrestling toys. I don't know if you saw this thing. This is like really high tempo. But they had talked about how Ted Turner, he bought and like formed his own, the ECW or whatever that was. Or was it WCW?
WCW.
One of them he owned. Like he just made it up because he had a beef with Vince McMahon. And so without him like sparking a rivalry, it would have just been WWF. Like he was paying for their best wrestlers to join his team. He would just overpay for them, kind of like the USFL tried to do with Herschel Walker. So like I was thinking, like they talk about the golf thing, LIV or whatever, and I said that maybe the players should get paid more, right? People are watching them on TV. Did you see what happened to them over the weekend? So
no.
Their contract or whatever is through like the CW, I think. And their match or whatever, their time slot ended with a tie. So instead of them going into overtime on the TV, they just, CW or whatever network they're on, were like, all right, let's go right into our infomercial section. So like some network or some regions had like infomercials. Some had like Family Feud on. And people were like, what the hell? Why would you pay so much money for these golf rights and then just give up to like run an infomercial? Like, what are you doing? Like the infomercial is pretty much you run it, you get paid, I would think. I don't think they have to run it at a certain time. That's why they're all running it in the middle of the night. Right? So like with the Pac-12 stuff coming up, which we're going to hit on later in the show, it just made me think, like, could you imagine if you're watching an Oregon football game and they have to win to make like the playoffs or whatever, goes to overtime, and it's like ShamWow, baby, and you're like, where did the game go? Where the My Pillow guy comes on. I don't know who else does infomercials these days, but it's like that made me laugh because I thought, and everyone wonders why like people hate like cable TV and stuff. It's not even cable, is like free over the air. I don't watch golf on TV. I think that's super boring, but I don't know. I know some people do, so like get paid. That's your thing. Let's get into the NFL schedule. NFL schedule dropped. I really don't have too much on it, but sticking with the TV thing, and then I'll let you run with it. NFL announced that one playoff game, and I thought this was perfection. Last year, where every playoff game was on a different free television network, one playoff game, I think the NBC one, is going to be shown on Peacock, I think. Or it's going to be streaming only. So whatever team it is, if it's not your local team that's playing in that game for the two cities, so like, let's just say, for argument's sake, if it's Pittsburgh and Cleveland, if you're not from that area between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, you're done. You have to pay for Peacock to watch the playoff game. And for me, I have to feel like that's going to hurt them times 100, right? Because, like, I'm not going to pay for a Peacock subscription for one game. And I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to get more people to buy in. But I wish they would go all in and just say, like, Peacock, or if that's who they're going with, like, take over the NFL Plus. We don't care about it. We're not really getting it. We don't show any TV or games or whatever. How about you just broadcast one game a week for people that want to pay for it that's, like, out of network? And we take, like, whatever the primetime game is that is typically, because, like, so right now, the way the TV contract works, each week there's a national game. There's two national games at 1. There's a national game at 4. And sometimes it flips to where there's 2. But there's 3 in the afternoon, and then, of course, at night or whatever. One of those 3 big games gets bumped if your regional team is playing. So, for example, let's say, just to keep it simple, I'm only going to name one team. Let's say the 3 national games are like the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Niners are playing. I don't get to see one of those 3 games because they're going to shove the Panthers on for me because I live in Carolina. Right? Why not just give me the other national game to where, like, okay, well, I really wanted to watch the Niners this week. That's a national game, but instead they have the Panthers on. Oh, let me just check Peacock or whatever streaming service they're doing per week, where you just get the national game. And they just let them stream all 3 national games, and then you'd get your local game for free anyway. So, like, you're not really stepping on anyone's toes. You're going to get the same broadcast. I think, to me, that would make the most sense and keep things easy for the fans, because I think what's going to happen is, like, when Thursday Night Football started, and even now, the first, like, for Thursday Night Football games on CBS or something, then it goes to, like, the NFL Network for a couple, then it goes to Amazon TV or whatever. But, like, the casual fan doesn't know that it switches networks 3 times. So what are they doing? They're not watching it. Right? You're giving them too many hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
So that's what I dislike about the NFL schedule. I had it up. I don't even know if I had any, like, main thoughts. Lions and Chiefs are kicking off the season. It's like, why? Are you trying to give the Lions hype?
Yes.
Like, yeah, but why not just let them win a few games? Why have them play the Chiefs first?
Let them catch on fire. They're going to be a contender. Put them right in the fire.
I was looking to see if the Jets played the Packers, but I didn't see it unless I missed it. I know they're doing a flex this year for the night games, I think, right? It's for Thursday night again.
Yeah.
So, like, I think they did with COVID or whatever. They started kind of doing it where they're trying to get those garbage games off Thursday night. So now every team doesn't have to play Thursday night, which is nice if you're trying to build a team and your team's not that good. You don't have to be embarrassed on national TV. I feel like the Steelers have a good chance to land there like 2 or 3 times, right?
Well, that was kind of the irony of it, is that for as hard as the Rooneys, like, tried to advocate not to do it that way, the NFL's like, no, you shut up, and you're gonna play multiple Thursdays.
Because I think there's a limit on 2 or 3, but I feel like the Steelers are going to hit that because they're the premier team. They're not going to be good enough this year to be a 1-tier team, but they're in that second tier where they're probably going to make the playoffs if they have a good year. They could easily miss it because they're going to be right around like the wild card spot, I think. So I think that's what they're trying to show on Thursday night. Teams that are in the playoff hunt, they try to get people's interest up, and it just happens to be like the Steelers, maybe the Packers for me. I have a feeling they're going to be shoved on there a couple times for the same reason. No Aaron Rodgers. The NFC is not as strong. So who knows? The Packers could have just go on a run. They could also bomb like last year and start off really slow. And then who knows? Like with Jordan Love, you never know with the new quarterback. So I think that gives them a little bit of flex time with some of the new quarterbacks coming in where we don't know if you're going to be quite ready, but we can hype you up on Thursday night for a couple weeks. And then if you start to tank, we just won't hear of you anymore. And if you start to do really good, then we'll maybe pump you up for one of the like late season flexes on like Sunday night or something. So, I also noticed there's one other random thing was the college football conflicts. I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but college football had slated some bowl games for like December 30th or something. And with the NFL schedule like overlapping, they moved the college football games to New Year's Day instead of like 30th. And I thought that's 100 times better. Like, why are you scheduling like the Orange Bowl or something on like the 30th? New Year's Day is for the games. I'm surprised they don't, when the playoff is expanded, the playoffs should be on New Year's Day. Like, bring back college football. Get rid of the New Year's Eve shit. No one cares about that. Like, I want to, you stay up all night, you sleep in, and then you wake up like right in time for noon for the first playoff game to kick off in college football if it's like a 4 game or whatever. Perfect, right? I think that's kind of like the Rose Bowls that get 5. They could do like, I think they should just get rid of the other bowls, but that's just me. But if they're going to be a fight with the NFL, I think that's the best way to flex around it. And so I'm glad that the NFL just said like, hey, we're going to do it. And then someone said that there's still that old law that like prevents the NFL from having games on like certain Fridays and Saturdays because of like precedents to academic schools for like high schools and colleges. And I thought that's good. I don't want NFL 7 days a week. Right? Because I think that would be the fastest way for me to stop caring about football. Regular season. Because it would become like hockey or like NHL. I think that's why it's easy for the casual fan. Because you're invested in like 1 or 2 days. I don't think most fans watch Thursday night. And I don't think most fans even watch Monday Night Football anymore. Because it's on ESPN. So they watch Sunday, and they might watch one of the other 2 games if they have like fantasy implications or if their team's playing. I think the numbers have pretty much backed that up. Why mess with that by adding another day? But what is your thoughts on the schedule and stuff?
I mean, I thought having the Jags have to stay in England for a really long time. Like, I think they're back-to-back weeks playing in London. Is kind of crazy. Having the way the options of having the Steelers games flexed out. They typically do play a lot of primetime games to begin with, but you know, I think the league's going to find it more challenging to try to play all these random games and give the players enough time to rest in between some of those. Because if you're going from Sunday night or Sunday and turning back around and playing on a short week on a Thursday, it doesn't give the players a lot of time to recoup from that previous game. But if you're doing that 2 or 3 times, and I mean, that could almost be a competitive disadvantage compared to a team that that is predominantly Sunday night. You're going to have that rest time and be better prepared down the stretch for playoffs. I mean, I do think with the moves that the Steelers made in the offseason so far, they're aligning themselves to start the season off in a pretty positive way. But I think a big key to it is starting hot and not getting themselves in this bind where you got to win 7 of your last 8 to make a wild card spot.
Well, that's where the Packers were. So I know that feeling, and I think the teams, like I said, I think they're in the same spot like TV was, where I don't think the Steelers are going to get that benefit of the doubt until Pickett does it like 2 or 3 years in a row or wins the Super Bowl, like Ben did early. And then you'll get the benefit of like, hey, this guy's really good. Because like I feel like the guys like Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers that won it in like 09 or in 010, like 10 or whatever, that was 11. After that, for the next decade, the commentators were all over them, no matter how bad their teams were. I feel like they were always overhyped for the TV deals just because they knew they were Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. Where guys like Burrow, they hype him up, but they're still like not putting him over the top because he didn't get it done. So like, is he going to Marino it? I feel like they're trying to avoid a Marino scenario where they know they can hype up Mahomes, and that's kind of where they're going with it. Tom Brady's gone. Does he come back? Right? Because he could still come back. I don't think he has a contract with the Bucs either, though. So I thought he was going to be a free agent, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he will come back. I think maybe he is done for sure.
And J.J. Watt was speculated to possibly look at Pittsburgh, but he came out and said, no, he's retired.
Maybe that will change too. You never know. If someone gets injured early in the year or whatever, and you're trying to stay healthy.
Yeah, win enough games and look like a major playoff threat, and you'll attract people that want to try to hop on for a ring.
Because people kept saying that with Gronk. Remember, they were like, "Well, he's not back yet. He's not coming back." And it's like, buddy, all he needs is like 2 or 3 weeks to be ready for the playoffs. And boom, that's when he came back. It was like, all right, awesome. Like ready? He needs to stay healthy. And I still remember when he got to the first games, like in the playoffs, the first guy like just took a shot at his knee, and I'm like, why is the NFL not stopping this? Like, I don't want to watch Gronk just get hurt. Right? You know that they're doing it. And they're gonna be like, well, Gronk's gigantic. Then he should be able to defend himself. Like, yeah, if that was Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, they'd have been shitting their pants as executives. I really don't think I have much more NFL stuff. I did have up, I forgot to mention it up, but the NBA playoff viewership is up. Just to compare it, like circling back to the XFL, where NBA playoffs have averaged like 5 million people compared to like 3 the past couple years or so. And so that's a big deal, but I also think it's due to the upsets. Where same with the NFL, you have these expanded playoffs. If the top teams keep winning every year, people aren't going to tune into that opening weekend. People are not going to tune in. Same with college football. You get a bunch of blowouts, but now you get some upsets, like TCU beats Michigan, then they get killed. Doesn't matter. People are going to tune into that opening weekend again, at least, to kind of see if there's going to be some upsets. If Georgia's like in the championship game again, or Bama, then people start to kind of tune out. But I think people like to see upsets. They like to see an 8-seed Heat finally break through, where the NBA used to be like a, hey, pick them, and you can just bet on them. And the odds were so low because they knew the same teams were going to advance to like the finals every year. Right? You knew it was going to be Golden State. You knew it was going to be like a good chance whatever team LeBron was on. So NFL has to avoid that too, because right now it's very AFC heavy. And the NFC, it's like crapshoot. Maybe the Eagles? Are the Eagles a team people are just going to tune in for, and then everyone else is kind of just like, yep, you're out. Don't care. Anything else you have for the NFL?
The Cowboys.
Oh, you think because the Cowboys, but they have to win the playoffs, Matt.
No, they don't. They're America's team. They will jam that down your face until you can't even stand it.
Nah, I think the America's team thing kind of ended with Tom Brady. Because it used to be Cowboys are America's team. We're going to show them everywhere. When Tom Brady won so many Super Bowls, I think it kind of drifted to more of a player focused thing. So now it's going to be more of like Mahomes type thing. I think it's more on players and quarterbacks more so than teams. I think they want some teams to do better than others because of the TV implications, but I don't think there's a pure America's team right now. But maybe I'm wrong. Anything else, Jeff, for the NFL?
No.
Just a little quick thing here before I jump to the college football stuff. I did try to look up for like ideas for the XFL, like regions in the United States where you could do like a team of the Southeast, like a Southwest team, a Midwest, like maybe a Pacific team, Rocky Mountain. That'd be like 5. You could do like a Northeast, maybe a Mid-Atlantic team, and maybe like a Central team, or like a Great Lakes team instead for like the 8th team. And then like you'd call it like the Southeast, like Razorbacks or something. Like, I don't know, like just try to get something different so you're not tied to one state and one city, and then try to bring those in. Because like right now with college football, you're basically splitting into the North versus the South. You have the SEC and you have the Big Ten. And with the news coming out of the ACC that there are 7 schools looking to break away with their grant of rights. So they are Clemson, Florida State, Miami, UNC, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Brett McMurphy called them the Magnificent Seven. They've met about the grant of rights. I'll say I can speak on UNC and NC State. I've seen a lot of people talk about how they're a joint package. They are 100% not a joint package. I don't think they end up in the same conference. I could be wrong. I just don't think they want one team left behind. Like, I think NC State is afraid that UNC is going to leave. And they do not want to be stuck in a Carolina conference with ECU, Wake, Duke. They just don't. Notice how Duke isn't in here either? I think they're tired of Duke's shit. Coach K was one of the main drivers behind this grant of rights deal because he wanted basketball first, all this stuff, and like UNC fans are kind of on board with them. So I think from those two that are kind of closest to me, I think right now I'd be surprised if they both ended up in the same conference. If they did, it would be the SEC. I've talked to a few UNC people, and they're surprisingly more in favor of going to the SEC than I thought they would be because of their perceived like academics and things like that. And the SEC is not an academic conference, but they're more of like a perceived that they're the Harvard of the South. So if they join the SEC, they're going to be like already at the level of like a Vanderbilt. That's what their guys have been telling me. So they think that they can go to the SEC. They would automatically be the premier team. And in basketball, they would just be them in Kentucky, you know, and that would just be like their new rival. They could say, like, screw Duke. They really don't care. The Duke thing is great, but they're a private school. They don't want to be left behind. I had the numbers from, like, the revenue. UNC is number 1 in terms of, like, brand revenue over the past couple years. Clemson was 2. Duke 3, Miami 4, Florida State 5, Pitt surprisingly 6th, and then NC State surprisingly 7th. NC State's in a great position because they're in Raleigh. I think you have a scenario where UNC and maybe Virginia would go to the Big Ten together. I'm not really a fan of getting them both in the Big Ten, but whatever. They wouldn't be my first choice. I'll say that. I think if that scenario happens, I think you're seeing Virginia Tech and NC State on this list. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not UNC and NC State working together. If it's NC State and Virginia Tech talking to the SEC saying, look, do you want to be in Virginia? Do you want to be in North Carolina? You have to take us. Like, if the other guys go north, you can't just ignore two gigantic states and give it to them. And so I think that would be how the dominoes would fall. If UNC and Virginia both go north, or hell, if SEC asks them and they say no, and NC State and Virginia Tech join the SEC, I think very soon you would see Virginia and UNC join the Big Ten. I think that's how the split would happen. You want to go ahead and give your thoughts on the Florida State side?
I mean, I feel like when you look purely from a dollars and cents from the TV deals and stuff, trying to leverage their way into the Big Ten makes more sense for Florida State. However, I think when you're looking at this group and trying to merge that into the SEC, I think that may be a little bit easier, because then you're kind of bypassing the Raycom nonsense and maybe pushing to still be under that ESPN umbrella, but being on the main network and getting the main media push, as opposed to just being that third-rate conference that if you don't just straight up win and go undefeated, that you don't stand a chance. You know, and I've said before, when you look at the Big Ten, you can lose one, maybe two games, and you're still going to get that push of, well, it's a tough schedule. You know, the SEC, you can lose a game or two, or hell, even 3 or 4, and it's like, well, it's the SEC grind, and it just means more, so you're going to get a chance. If Florida State loses a conference game, and it doesn't matter which one, you're done. You pack your bags. You'll get the Podunk Bowl game and be on your way. Like, and you know, they'll find a way to fit two SEC schools in with the justification that, oh, they have a loss. And you know, I'm for Florida State making the push, and I think that the thing that's helping them is that they're rounding out the athletic program now. Like, with football coming back, I think basketball was on an uptick and had a hiccup this past season. I think there's going to be some more stability with baseball here with the new coach. I mean, the season was rough for them, where they're not making the postseason. But on the flip side, girls softball has a great chance of potentially winning it all this season. So, I mean, I think like the men's sports and women's sports are pretty balanced, and they're fielding competitive teams across a lot of stuff that they would be an addition. I just don't know if the winning that they've had in the past would be a deterrent for wanting to, like, I don't know what conferences would want to accept that challenge of bringing them in, knowing that if the school's being competitive without the money, now to bring them in and provide them with resources to upgrade facilities, include NILs for players, and potentially add more game-changing athletes. What does that do to the programs overall? You know, I think it completely changes that dynamic. So I'd like to see them make that push to the bigger conference, but at the same time, what does that? I think if they implode the ACC, I'm curious to see which way the chips are going to fall, because I think it definitely leads to a huge ripple effect within the rest of the NCAA.
That's why I keep hearing rumors about the ACC going for an uneven revenue sharing, right? And I don't see how other schools would agree to that if it was just football. And like, you're bringing in other sports and things, I think that makes it more realistic. But then that's also going to take money away from the big football schools. Like, Florida State's not going to get a bigger punch list if UNC is winning 10 conference championships, And so I feel like that balance isn't going to be an extra $10 million just for Florida State to stay, which is how like some of the sports writers are kind of making it out. And honestly, I don't think ESPN's going to pay for them to join the SEC. I really don't. Same. So like going back to the other two teams we didn't talk about, Miami and Clemson, do they have a leg to stand on? Clemson, I think, has zero chance of getting invited. I know that they're a football school. Maybe the SEC takes them as like a secondary choice. There's no way that you hear first unless Florida State's a package deal with them. But even then, I think it's kind of redundant. Like, right? Because you're going to put Florida State and Clemson, and then you're going to have what? The rivalry game on Thanksgiving is going to be, hey, Florida State's going to play Florida, and Clemson's going to play South Carolina. Great. But that's not like Ohio State, Michigan type level that you're trying to compete with. You have Auburn, Alabama. Are you going to have like Texas, Oklahoma that weekend? Because that's usually played earlier in the year. What are you doing? I think if the Big Ten, a lot of people are kind of just ignoring the Florida State to the Big Ten. Florida State brass, their admin really wants the Big Ten for the academic thing. So I think if they would bring in travel partners, Florida State and Miami, I know it's not as close as like USC and UCLA, but having a Thanksgiving day matchup where your lineup for that weekend is Michigan, Ohio State. The afternoon game is right now would be like Penn State, Michigan State. And then at night you would have Florida State, Miami. I think that lineup's pretty tough to beat. And I don't think like anything the SEC is putting up against that for a night game is going to compare.
Yeah.
Unless you flip like Oklahoma, Texas. But even then, are people in the East Coast watching that? Or are they going to watch Florida State and Miami? Because like that could have implications, right? You play Ohio State, Michigan, that's going to be one team in the championship game. What if the winner of Florida State and Miami make it? Everyone talks about Miami not winning the ACC. Could you imagine? All right, maybe they're not going to be the top dog in the Big Ten, but you throw more money at them. And I keep saying conferences need body bag teams. Maybe the SEC is looking and thinking, well, NC State and Virginia Tech, they sell out no matter how bad their team is. That can be a body bag team that we don't have right now, You bring in Virginia and UNC, what's the difference in football between them and NC State and Virginia Tech? You don't really want to upset the balance too much. Because like if you bring in a school like Duke for basketball, Coach K's not there anymore, they fall off. What are they doing other than just sucking money from other schools? I think they'd have to be weary about taking another private school after seeing how Vanderbilt can't compete.
Yeah.
Do you really want Duke there? Do you really want Clemson there? Because like Clemson now, yeah, they've won some big games. They beat Alabama like every other year or whatever that was in their glory run. You'd have to beat Alabama, Georgia, Florida, potentially Florida State. Now you're playing like 4 teams. You're not winning them every year. You're going to go back to being 8-4 Clemson. That's where I think Texas coming in. Like if Texas wins the SEC, I would be in the first like 5 years. I would be very surprised. Right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have Arch Manning and they have all this hype and stuff, but it's like I'm still thinking it's going to take them a while to like build up. And some of these programs with Kirby Smart at Georgia and Nick Saban at Bama still, like, they're established. Brian Kelly's at LSU. They've won a national championship recently. It's going to be really tough for some of the schools, like even Clemson, coming into the SEC. And there's only so many time slots. And the ABC has, like, all these other games and stuff, too. I just really don't see them paying for these other 7 schools. I think what's going to happen is the Big Ten will pick but they've made it pretty clear that they don't want to look like they're killing a conference. So they're kind of cool just letting Oregon and Washington wait it out. Right? They made it seem like, hey, we'll take you guys, but not right now. You're happy in the Pac-12. Like, what's Oregon supposed to say to that? Like, no, we hate it here. Like, please save us. Phil Knight will come. He's in Chicago right now throwing money around. Please take his money. Like, that's kind of where they're at. So, let me see. There were some other conference like TV things. The one thing that I forgot about with the Big Ten. Now the picks really messed up like Penn State's whiteout. Perfect for Michigan, right? So this year, the pick for the night game ended up being Ohio State, Michigan State. Penn State and Michigan are pushed into the earlier time slot for big Fox noon because that's the best game, right? They're not going to white out at noon. Are you serious?
Maybe they will.
No, they didn't. They already announced it. So thank you, Fox. I really appreciate it. We know we're the Michigan network. It makes it a lot easier. We don't have to play in whiteouts. So thank you guys for picking us once again. We love the last 2 seasons how it went playing big noon games, Matt. Let's make it a third, right? So I think Penn State announced that they're going to do Iowa, which isn't even a pure night game, I don't think. I think it's a CBS night game, which is like their 3:30 matchup.
Oh, it's a wild card.
Right? So it's going to be like half light, half dark. The only other game that it could have been would have been the West Virginia game super early in the year, which might have worked out, but West Virginia hasn't been good. So like it worked when they played Auburn a couple years ago. And heck, maybe you want to bring recruits to a West Virginia beatdown, but then if you get upset, like how bad does that look for your team? You're supposed to be good coming into the year. So there's that. Someone also told me that the Big Ten Network might stay separately owned by Fox because it's like a Fox thing. And so Peacock's only going to show one Big Ten game per week. Now, luckily, I don't have to worry about the nonsense with Michigan being on main TV most of the time. But I thought, like, are they contracted to play one game a year on Peacock? Because that's going to suck. Because, like, how am I going to find that, you know? Someone also tried to tell me that Notre Dame is going to be, they're still going to get favorable treatment on NBC. So you're going to be watching Michigan, and in the middle of the game, they're going to interrupt and show, like, Notre Dame highlights and talk about how they're playing Wake Forest the next week. And a big-time showdown between 5 and 5 teams. I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very shocked if that happened. Like, you don't pay all the money for the Big Ten and then only hype up Notre Dame. I feel like they're closing the ranks. The only other thing, this is my last random thought, I think from my college notes. The only other thing that I can think of is that this Magnificent Seven or whatever, what if they just quit the ACC and then all try to join like the Big Ten together with Notre Dame? That would give the conference 24 teams. It wouldn't be ideal, but I think it would be better for like the Big Ten to actually have like a split of schools that used to work together, and you could have a division, right, of the Florida State, Clemson, Miami, UNC, NC State, like Virginia or Virginia Tech, like one of the two or something. And then, like, that's it. Or maybe break Miami out and just have the 6 other schools being like one pod of 6. Put Miami up with Penn State. And, like, try to do, like, that thing again where you have a division of Clemson, Florida State, UNC, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech, which is, like, your southeast pod. Then you have, like, your east pod, which would be Notre Dame, Penn State, Miami, Rutgers, Maryland, and like Indiana or something. I don't know. And then, of course, then you would have like the Midwest, like the old Big Ten pod, which would be like the Ohio States, Michigans together. And then like a Western side pod, which would be like Nebraska, Iowa, and like USC and UCLA. And then you kind of have like more of a regional national thing going. I almost
think if they did something like that, the Big Ten would put more pressure on the SEC to go after Oregon and to go after like some of the northern schools.
Well, I think they would have to, but I think at that point, if you get to 24, the reason I just gave like some quick divisions like that is I think what Fox would want, and like NBC and CBS, they would want like a 32-team conference. Because everyone keeps saying like, oh no, once these conferences get to 24, they're done. Like, why? I feel like there are teams from like the Big 12 that want to stay relevant. But if the Big Ten's like in a 24-team national conference like this, where every week on regular TV, you're getting major matchups between like Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Florida State, Clemson, Penn State. It's like, holy shit, this is a major conference, killing each other all the time. And you're making a ton more money than everyone else. The other conferences, eventually, any of their teams are going to be ready to jump ship. And if Fox is like, you know what, we want Oregon and Washington next, and we're going to kind of just pick and choose who we want to fill out this conference with, I think that it would just be kind of like up to Fox to kind of pick and choose and say like, hey, we want Georgia Tech because we want in Georgia for recruiting and stuff. That'd be great for you guys. We want like some more Western schools to help out USC and UCLA. And if you grab 2 or 3 of more of the Western schools, the SEC is never, ever going to be able to match it. Like the numbers are in, you can see the numbers crunched by like people for the past 10 years. It's always those top schools. And once they're picked, the SEC is going to have to like kind of convince one of those schools to just join the SEC for no reason. And is ESPN going to overpay? And what if the money stops like with the ACC one year? Because if ESPN overpays one time, ESPN's making a ton of layoffs right now, Matt. They're going through another round of layoffs. You can't tell me that they're laying people off and then they're going to announce, hey, great news, guys. We're breaking apart the ACC and paying more to keep Florida State and Clemson here. That'd be insane. That'd be like the worst executive deal of all time. Their best move would be that they're going to give a little bit of extra bonus money for teams based on their performance. Where if I'm ESPN, I'm going to say, hey, we know your deal's set in stone, but we'll give you $10 million more for certain teams if they make the playoffs or if they make the Final Four in basketball or something like that to help with brand recognition. If you get an ACC team in the playoffs, we'll give them $10 million extra dollars. So that would give like Clemson and Florida State an incentive to like win more. But if you don't do that, like why would ESPN pay the conference more?
Yeah.
Like it makes zero sense. So that's why I think if 7 teams are looking to leave, the other schools, what is there left? 7? Is there 14 in that conference? So half of them are looking to get out. If they all leave, and people think it's going to be like, oh, hey, Big Ten gets their pick, SEC gets their pick, Big Ten gets their pick, and it just goes back and forth. Like, that's not how it's going to work. It is going to be like a desperation, like, holy crap, USC's leaving, or UNC's leaving. Can NC State come with you, please? Like, that board meeting would be insane. Duke people would be going crazy, too. But I already thought about that, too. I was talking to UNC guy, and I said, what if I think they're doing a bye week, right? So Duke and UNC aren't in the same conference. You have the college football playoff games or whatever. What if the following Saturday every year in December, that second weekend or whenever it would be, is the Duke-UNC rivalry game? It's early in the year. Doesn't matter. It'd be later than like the Big Ten ACC Challenge, but it gives you bragging rights for the entire year because you only play once. That's what makes Michigan and like Ohio State game much more powerful. It's only played once, and if you're playing on the same exact weekend every year, people would be into it. And heck, maybe like some of the other schools can like follow suit, and that can just be like a Big Ten. If the UNC goes to the Big Ten, that can just be like a Big Ten, like basketball rivalry, like cross conference rivalry weekend, since they're not doing the Big Ten ACC Challenge anymore. Like that would be cool, I think. So I don't know, but I mean, you have any other thoughts on the ACC? Do you think it gets done this year or anything?
I want to say no, just because everyone's under contract, and I feel like it would be a move that they would want to do either like during the preseason media stuff, that they would want to announce it so that they can control what the league's going to be like or how the dissolving is going to happen. But I would be shocked if they do it this summer.
Because my last thing is dates to keep in mind. UNC and UCLA was right around like June-ish, I think, because that's the end of fiscal year for a lot of schools. June 30th. That's when the next contracts like kind of go into effect.
Yeah.
So if something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the next 6 weeks or so. If it happens in July after that, then that's more of a reaction to like the Pac-12's media deal really sucks and Oregon's going independent, you know? So, I don't know. Anything else you have on the NCAA?
Yeah. I was surprised over the weekend to see Destin Hill finally arrived on campus. He was a blue chip prospect, was a really highly touted receiver for Florida State. And back in 21, it was like he was supposed to be here, and it almost just kind of turned into like a Florida State joke. Like, oh yeah, he's coming. And like years have passed, and like he originally came out that he was going to be gone for personal matters and family things. And so it just seemed like, oh, that ship sailed. But he maintained like his connections to his recruiting coordinator and was able to address whatever things that were going on. And they finally released like the film of showing that he is like officially on campus. He's on roster. They have him in like for everything, and I think he's gonna be a contributor this year, which is gonna be a really cool story to get out as the season comes up.
That reminds me of like, didn't Jalen Hurts like graduate too? Like he just graduated this year. Guys like working to get on campus, and then you have guys like Stetson Bennett still haven't graduated. He's been there like since like whatever year he called out the Rose Bowl, wasn't it like 2017 or something?
Yeah.
So he's like the epitome of didn't come to play school, even though Ohio State has that trademarked. Anything else you have?
Not for college.
You have anything for the final bell?
Yeah. Germantown Winery, baby. 1-0 in T-ball.
How'd it go?
We kicked off the season yesterday. Everybody batted. Everybody got a hit. Everybody scored. We had no strikeouts, so we are 1-0.
Nice, dude. Congrats.
Everybody filled their hats full of gravel, so our nice black hats are all gravel gray.
Hilarious, dude. You have anything else? I'm like dead at this point, so you can go ahead and finish this out.
We're the Oakland Raiders of the PAYA. Had kids with shirts untucked, hats backwards, just ripping it. Very
prime of you. Which Fox was using like prime times game versus TCU, and their Ohio State Michigan game is like their 2 games of the year. And I was like, that's gonna be crazy. I hope Prime like pulls off the upset, but that could also be a complete ass whooping. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah.
But that's all I have. Thanks for listening to the show. Got off-season stuff coming up. Like I said, hopefully we'll have some movement on conferences or something going forward. I want some more clarification on like the streaming stuff. So I'll fill you in if I find out more information. And thanks for listening. We will see you next week.